Welcome to the Well Path podcast, where we sit down with experts and entrepreneurs across fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, and spirituality, offering you an inside peek at building a business and a life that is truly aligned. I'm your host, Brooke Robbins. Let's get into it. Amanda, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here.
I literally could not be more excited for this episode. I'm excited to share some context with our listeners. And I think before we dive in, I want to start and just open with like who you are to me and how we got connected. So Amanda is my coach and spiritual mentor and spirit mom. I lovingly refer to her to my friends as my fairy godmother. And we got connected in like the most beautiful serendipitous way. Those of you that are longer term listeners of the podcast know that I had a crazy year last year, broke off an engagement, moved continents, and Amanda and I got connected right after I moved to Miami, which again, if anyone is listening to this and has been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll know was like a very gut intuition driven decision based primarily on like signs and synchronicities. And when I moved to Miami, I posted something on the Well Path Instagram account about having made a decision based purely on gut feeling to move to Miami. Amanda saw it somehow by the grace of God and commented on it like, this is so relatable, or I did the same thing, or something along those lines. I then, internet stalked her and saw all of these like amazing parallels and similarities between sort of like our life paths. And I think I messaged you and I was like, I think we need to meet.
Yeah. And it just was like so aligned from the until now. It's just been so aligned.
Totally. So. And I think we got on a Zoom call and it was like the second that I started talking to you, it was like this sort of like resonance feeling of like, I knew that I needed to work with you.
Yeah.
And I think what's really amazing is that I don't think you even advertise the type of stuff that we do together, but there was just this feeling of like, I need to work with you. And I'm so grateful that you extended that and sort of we figured out a way to do that. So I want to definitely at some point in the episode, like talk about some of the stuff that we do together. But, but before we get into that, I'd love to just kind of take it back because you had a really amazing like high power hospitality career and then this really kind of incredible transformation story. Now you're doing a lot of work at the intersection of spirituality and entrepreneurship, coaching entrepreneurs primarily, launching some new things as well. So I'd love if you could just share a little bit about, I guess, your professional background, sort of where it started and what kind of caused the shift.
Oh, man. Okay. And this will obviously be the truncated version because you can't really condense 20 plus years of career into a soundbite. But I started my career in the high profile nightlife world in New York City. I was an undergrad at Columbia. And, in hindsight, my primary driver was I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be special. I wanted to be important. And you get to New York and the nightlife scene and the restaurant scene and the celebrity culture is everywhere and getting into parties and fashion week. And I was like, oh my God, if I can do this, like I can do anything, at 19. And so at that age, I decided to find out who were the movers and shakers in the nightlife industry in New York City. Found out it was a guy named Noah Tepperberg and cold emailed from my columbia.edu email and said like, I want to be your intern. And they're like, well, we're like a nightclub. We don't have interns. And, but they ended up taking me on as an intern. And this was the summer after my sophomore year. I was with that company for 14 years and I grew from intern to doing events and then doing sales and then doing partnerships and then eventually becoming a partner. And at a certain point in the journey, I worked myself into such severe burnout that I had to get heart surgery at the age of 28. And, that was not the first wake-up call from the universe, but that was certainly an undeniable one. And when I had to put everything on pause, like I was in the surgery room with two phones, I actually delayed my surgery because we had a venue opening and I was like, I can't miss the opening. So can we push it 2 weeks? My surgeon's like, you're insane. I see why you're here. But I had to really do a lot of soul searching. And, in that year when I took a sabbatical after my surgery, I started deep diving on not just health, not just wellness, but really the mind, body, spirit connection, which at that time, this is 2013, that wasn't in the zeitgeist the way that it is now. Like, I feel like everybody knows about the nervous system. Everybody has some understanding of the connection between stress and what's going on with your health. But back then, it really wasn't a part of the big conversation. And it was like, even the, you'll sleep when you're dead type of ethos was really big in the high performance, ambition driven communities. And so I felt initially like such a loser. Like I have to take a pause and recalibrate. And I used that year, as a type A person would, to get certified in everything from meditation to yoga therapy to Reiki. And I eventually began to incorporate those aspects into a career. So I needed to make money. I wasn't really ready to go off on my own. And I pivoted into corporate wellness. I worked at Sakara and Melissa Wood Health. I was a VP of business development and then a GM. And at a certain point, I realized, wait, I want to be teaching this stuff. I want to be creating this stuff. I really don't want to be the wind beneath someone's wings or the ghostwriter anymore. And so it's been almost 4 years now that I've been on my own doing coaching. And the work that I do has evolved so consistently and so rapidly. And we'll kind of get into that. But all to say, from staying at one job for 14 years and then 4 years and then 9 months, and now it's like every month there's something new and fresh in what I'm doing and what I'm offering. And it just feels so aligned to be able to move and evolve along with my internal growth.
I love that. Yeah, I love that so much. And I'm curious, like you had kind of a really, I would say, dramatic wake-up call.
Yeah, to say the least.
When that happened, had you already kind of started sort of like spiritual work, or was that like the genesis story of getting into this stuff?
I wish it was like I had like a Kundalini awakening on the surgery table. No, I had been doing I'd been a spiritual student and a spiritual practitioner for a long time already. I was in undergrad at Columbia. I started studying with Bob Thurman, who's like a very esteemed Buddhist teacher. I became a vegan at 20. I was an ethical vegan practicing ahimsa or non-harming for 8 years. I was already certified as a yoga teacher, doing yoga like 90 minutes every morning. So you should know better, Amanda, was very loud in my head when I had the burnout experience. It was almost like I was living two parallel lives where there was a part of my soul and my spirit that knew you're meant to be pursuing these types of things. You're meant to be walking a spiritual path. And then there was another much more egoic part of me that was like, no, like you need to make a name for yourself. You need to be successful. You need to make money. And the two things were ne'er shall the two part, right? They were just completely two different worlds. And so it was almost like all the things that I had been kind of keeping over here in the side. I think a lot of people can relate to their spirituality being like a side hustle. But when I had that really rock bottom moment, it forced me to really take a lot of that a bit more seriously. And it also contributed to, just being honest, a lot of shame, because there was a part of me that did know like this is in alignment. But when you're traveling around the world, planning parties for Beyonce and like the coolest person in New York City, right? Like everyone thought I was so cool.
Yeah.
And I really I loved that. And a part of me needed that in that moment in my life.
Yeah. That's actually a really interesting concept I'd love to double click on, because I think this is something that I think a lot of listeners will probably relate to. I certainly do, of like, sometimes you get stuck in a situation because you look at it from an outsider perspective and you say to yourself, well, so many people would kill to be in my position. So many people so I should be therefore happy and fulfilled, but like you're not. And so I think it's easy to talk yourself out of what's actually aligned for you, because you sort of conditionally think that it should be making you feel a certain way, even when it's not.
Yeah. I would say this is more common than anyone imagines, because even in founders that I coach who are doing the thing they chose to do, they're making all kinds of choices based on outside perception. And in the age of social media, I mean, thank God there wasn't social media back then, because I don't even know it would have been even worse for me, because I would have already created a personal brand, and then I would have had to change my handle from Amanda Nightlife to Amanda Spirituality or whatever. I didn't have those things to contend with. But we are so performative and it comes from a good place, right? We all want to belong. We all want to belong. We want to be seen. We want to be loved. We want to be supported. And there is a fallacy that is, well, who I really am isn't actually like interesting or good enough or special enough. No, if I want people to like me, I need to do something that is unquestionably special and matters to the largest number of people. And so, pretty much all of my life, I was chasing, how do I become special enough to matter? Straight A student, graduated early from Columbia, worked my ass off and partied my ass off to do what was like, well, if celebrities are doing this, then if I'm doing this, I must be, and this is all subconscious, right? Like this is like, I'm 41 now. I've had a lot of time to process what was going on in my mind as like a freaking teenager and early 20 something.
Yeah.
And it was a good plan. It made sense for a girl that was desperate to prove her value to the world.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that. I find this this is what I find amazing about like you and I, there's just so many parallels, but I relate to that so much. And especially, as an undergrad, it's like looking back, I can see how much of I call it like gold star mentality, but it's interesting because I look back and I'm like, it really did serve me for a period of time. Like
totally.
All of those things are total door openers even today, right?
Yeah.
Having worked like whatever so hard in high school to be straight A's and Columbia and scholarships and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, I value that for what it was, but comes a certain point where it's like, you have to let it go.
Yeah. It's almost like training wheels, right? And so a big part of my work is always about self-worth repair, because when we don't have a really strong intrinsic sense of self-worth, we're always going to do the things that are like, how do I get more approval? How do I get more love? How do I get more love? How do I get more love? Right. And we self-sacrifice, right? So Gabor Mate talks about the decision to choose belonging or authenticity. And when we are very young, children living in a house without a lot of control, we have to choose belonging because it's how we stay safe, fed, loved, all of those things. And then as we grow, right, ideally, we are walking more and more and more towards authenticity and finding the people that we belong with as ourselves, right? It's not that we need to be lone wolves and, reject community and society. But there are people who will accept us and love us and think we're fabulous the way that we are, the way that we came here to be. And unfortunately, that might not be like our parents. It might not be the kids that we went to middle school with. It might not be our, the peers that we had in our first job. And that's really hard to let yourself feel the loss of connection and community and choose, wait, I actually want to do these kind of things and be this kind of person, even if that means like I'm ousted from my tribe for a little bit.
Yeah. And I think there's the topic that you just mentioned about sort of like intrinsic versus extrinsic self-worth and kind of self-confidence. And I think it's a good one to just like spend a second explaining for listeners, because this is something it took me a while to like fully grasp. And I think that a lot of times, I think especially people listening to the podcast are probably somewhat similar to us, a little type A, and whatever. There are things kind of, but I think there's an interesting distinction to be made between the confidence that comes from, to your point, some sort of external validation, whether it's like how many followers you have on your social media, to your point, or, are your parents, how your parents feel about you or how your friends feel about you versus like how you feel about you.
Yeah.
And at least for me, like, I think for a while I wasn't able to discern between the two.
Yeah.
And it took like some big thing happening for me to be like, oh, shoot, like, now I can see that the rug is pulled out from under me and I don't actually have that like strong base that I thought that I had of self-worth when other things are stripped away.
Yeah. I'll share two things that I think are helpful in kind of determining this, right? So the first one is when you receive a lot of accolades or a lot of approval for something that is not actually in alignment with your true self, it's not going to hit like you think it will, right? So when I was experiencing a lot of success in these other industries, when I would get invited places, it's like, this is supposed to feel better than it does, but I guess it feels good because other people are telling me that it feels good, right? And so if you're noticing that like the thing that you thought, and I hear founders say this all the time, I thought once I raised the VC money that I'd be proud of myself, but I don't feel any different. I'm like, I don't even care. And it's like, okay, well, that clearly is not an accolade that is directly tied to what you value most. Now, when someone calls me a fairy godmother, I can literally feel a tingle go like up my little channel, and there's like a little sparkle because it's like, yeah, that's who I came here to be. I came here to be a healer, a teacher, a light bringer, right? To help people tap into their self-worth. When someone compliments me on my business skills, I actually don't care anymore because I'm like, yeah, that's competency. That's not my soul's purpose.
Wow.
And so the challenges, and this was the part 2, in order to assess the difference, you need to slow down and be really honest with yourself, because it does feel good to get 1,000 likes on an Instagram post. It's like, ooh, right? It does feel good to get a press mention or, invited to a cool thing. But if you really sit with it and ask yourself, did this light me up in a somatic way? Did this bring me real joy, or is this clout? And the thing is, it's like, you don't have to choose one or the other, but like, if you're living your life like 75% in authenticity and 25% for a little, occasional razzle dazzle, great. Like, you're doing good, right? This is not about like, I will never step out of my authenticity and put on lipstick for, to get some more likes on my post, right? It's like, that's not real, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't slow down, you could mistake clout for real worth for a long time.
Okay, I absolutely love the distinction there, and that was so incredibly well said. I think this is a good point to just talk a little bit about like somatic experiencing, and I guess I'll share just from the perspective of our work together. So like the way that we work together is partially more traditional kind of coaching, and then partially we do these sort of somatic experiencing sessions, which was something I had never experienced before meeting you, and has been just like so transformative. And I think for me, when I came to you, I had been in therapy, talk therapy on and off for like 4 or 5 years. And it had felt like talk therapy, I think I'd mentioned this to you when we first started working together, had been like really helpful for me to kind of understand certain patterns and understand the way that I think about certain things or why certain things exist in my life.
Yeah.
But I struggled to then take that and like actually change it from like a baseline nervous system perspective. And I think that's why we kind of started working on the somatic experiencing. And I'd love if you could share a little bit about like what it is, what it isn't. I think some people might have heard of this, and I think like somatics and nervous system regulation, there's also many different like flavors of it.
Yeah.
But I'd love to shed a little bit of light on the type of work that you do with me and other clients, perhaps.
Yeah. So I want to first say that if any of this feels like elusive or woo-woo or hard to pin down, to just pause and because everything that I'm going to share is the most like basic mammalian functioning. Like, it is so the opposite of esoteric and woo. It's literally like what's happening inside my body, your body, everyone's body, a dog's body. Like, we all have a nervous system. We all have the ability to sense things happening in us somatically. And it's kind of crazy that society got this far along without that being like really important. It's like, it's really important. We spend so much time processing what's happening in our thoughts and so little time processing what happens in the entire rest of our body. So that's my little preface. I'm a pragmatist. I'm a Capricorn. I will stand on business that somatic experiencing is the most accessible and effective form of nervous system work because it has a lot of research behind it. Everyone that teaches or everyone that practices it has had to go through a full 3-year training and certification program. You can't do a weekend course. It takes, 3 full years. And it's very targeted. And what I mean is, this, when you do somatic experiencing, you start with a trigger. And that trigger, usually, it can be something as simple as there's this person I work with, and for some reason, as soon as they speak, my throat closes up. I get really small. I'm not able to communicate, and I don't know why. and I really need to move through this because they're my manager or they're my peer or whatever. And so we'll track, okay, what's happening in the body? What are the sensations? And as you feel into those sensations, generally, there are memories, there are remnants of past situations that are energetically the same as what that person is bringing up. And so it's like that person actually may not matter to you much at all. They might be kind of insignificant, but the energy that they produce in your nervous system might remind you of that coach that you had all 4 years of high school and you were terrified of them and you couldn't sleep after they yelled at you or whatever the thing is. It could take you back to a pre-verbal memory. It's very common. And so you don't necessarily need to make sense of the story. You need to understand that any response that your body has makes sense. It might not make sense in the present moment, and it might not make sense given the conditions that you're currently in. But at some point in your life, it was a survival response that was appropriate and necessary. And then it just got stuck. And I often will talk about the movie Inside Out.
Love that movie.
Because in the movie Inside Out, they show how like all your good thoughts or your happy thoughts go in one box, all your sad, all your confused, all your anxious, right? And that's kind of how our nervous system works. Like there's a meme that I'm sure everyone's seen about like, why can't my nervous system determine when it's an email or a tiger chasing me? And it's just like that. And so instead of trying to make sense of why you can't stop thinking about your ex from 10 years ago or why public speaking makes you go numb, right? Let's explore the actual somatic sensation. We're so good at intellectualizing. And this is why talk therapy didn't work for me, because I can give good talk. I'm like, oh, you want me to make a great story for why that happened? Get ready, But that doesn't, just because I can make a great story of it, doesn't mean my heart isn't clenched and my belly isn't grinding. And I'm, like our bodies have wisdom. Everyone's body has wisdom. And if you had told me this, in my days, I would have been like, oh yeah, whatever, lady. But I hope that more people don't have to get to a rock bottom before they're like, maybe I should, I'm going to listen to the wisdom of my body.
Yeah. It's interesting how that is usually how it works though. And I think all of these things and even, part of like my mission with the podcast is like, you're ultimately fertilizing soil. Yeah. But I do think there's like a divine timing aspect to like when you are ready. That's how I feel about like us meeting is like when you're ready, the guide appears, and like when you're ready, the information is there. And hopefully, the soil is fertilized. So like you kind of know where to look, or you at least know kind of like what you're looking for. But I think there's an element of like, you're kind of ready when you're ready. And maybe for people listening, this makes sense now. And maybe for people listening, there are some people that are like, I don't really get it.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, and this is like one of my favorite quotes as it relates to somatic awareness, God throws pebbles and then God throws bricks. Learn to listen to the pebbles.
Yeah.
So if you are having insomnia, autoimmune flare-ups, your hair's falling out, your digestive system is malfunctioning, get really curious, not just about what supplements you're taking, not just about what food allergies you have, what is energetically potentially a trigger. And it's not to say it's one or the other, right? I believe in food allergies. I believe in science.
Yeah.
And a lot of those things are early psychosomatic cues that something is energetically off. And if you're listening to this and you're like, oh shit, it's an invitation to get curious about what relationships, what experiences, what habits, what tendencies might be creating alarm bells in your body. Because that's all it is. Your body's like, nope. And then it's going to be like, nope, hell no, right? Like it will keep getting louder and louder. And, a lot of, not as much anymore, but for sure when I started my coaching career, I was like the founder having a nervous breakdown kind of like pipeline because my burnout story, I'm so public about it. And it is a very extreme burnout story. And so people would come to me when they were, kind of in a rock bottom, even if publicly you'd have no idea, which is, very, interesting in today's society. It's so easy to put on a mask and post the good picture and secretly behind the scenes, you're like at the hospital every other week, you know?
Yes.
But nowadays people are starting, not that they change their ways, that preemptively, but there's enough awareness that I think people are like, oh, I do believe that my autoimmune flare-ups are not just related to like scratchy sheets or whatever,
Yeah, I agree with you. And to your point, it's like it's not actually a physical thing, because it is, but sometimes the cause is also related to something psychosomatic that has a real
100%.
physical impact. There's a phrase that I really like that this conversation is reminding me of, which is like, where it's hysterical, it's historical.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot, because you see this with people, even with my family dynamic. It's like sometimes someone has like a really extreme reaction to something and you're like, whoa, like that is not about that. Clearly. I don't know what it's about, but it's like something else is happening there. I guess like what would be do you have any advice for people maybe like in the moment? And I know this is something, it takes some time to kind of develop an awareness, but there's a lot of the work that we do together. But like in the moment that somebody is feeling that way, like they're triggered by something and they recognize like, okay, the extremity of their reaction doesn't match the situation.
Yeah.
Like, what is the best thing for a person to do in this situation?
Yeah. I want to be like super tactical because I don't want to give some esoteric answer from like my own understanding. Tara Brach, who is a phenomenal teacher, she's one of my mentors. She has a practice called RAIN. It is an acronym. It stands for recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. If you go to her website, we can even link the PDF maybe in the show notes. It's a process that you could engage in for a day, a weekend, or you can do it in like 30 minutes. So the first thing is recognize. I'm fucking triggered by this. Like, why am I like, this is not a reaction that I want to be having. And it doesn't feel like a reaction that I've chosen. The next one is allow it. Like, it's there, right? Don't squash it. Don't self it. Obviously, like, don't punch someone in the face or scream at them. But a lot of our instabilities in our nervous system, a lot of our even like psychosomatic illnesses are caused, as we know, by suppressing emotion. So if you're really angry, allow yourself to be angry. Then investigate, get curious. What about this made me so angry? If it feels like an outsized reaction, is it outsized or is it just socially inappropriate? In the investigation phase, you can journal, process. If you have someone safe to unpack with, whether it's a professional or not, coming from the lens of all of my reactions make sense in a certain context. And then the last one is nurture. And this is where I think a lot of people don't do it. Like we have to be our own best advocates. And so on a day that you've been behaved in a way that you're not proud of or not stood up for yourself in a moment and then realized after, you have to be kind to yourself. You have to nurture yourself, because if you are engaging in RAIN, you are doing really good, right? Awareness is the first step to being able to make those empowered shifts. And I hear clients all the time who'll be like, doing the play-by-play after the fact and beating themselves up for what they did, what they didn't do, how they behaved, how they didn't behave. And in Buddhism, there's a concept called the second arrow, which you may have heard of. The first arrow, that's a thing that happens. You can't always control what happens. Can't even really always control like an outburst, right? I cried at work. Oh, why did I do that, right? The second arrow is, I always do this. I'm such a piece of shit. Like, I'm never going to get better, right? We can control that second arrow. And we have to actually be really disciplined about, like, if you start hearing yourself creep into the bad thing happened and now I'm going to make myself feel worse. Like, that's the thing where we take our power back and start nurturing ourselves and being kind to ourselves. The way that I have kids, so it's very easy for me to be like, would I say this to my child? And if I wouldn't say it to my child, I don't want to say it to anyone else, most importantly, myself.
Yeah. Well, one of the best things you ever had me do was like find a photo of myself. You told me to find a photo of myself as a child that captured my like original essence, like my true essence, and like make that my phone screen background. And just like, love that person like my own future daughter.
Yeah.
And it was like so healing. And I had never really thought about my, like, you talk about like inner child work or whatever, but it's like it's different when you're actually like, looking at a photo of yourself and you're like, I love her.
Right.
Like, I love her.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Yeah. And not to make this super weird, but that's how I feel about everyone. Like, I can really imagine every single person as this like perfect 3 or 4-year-old. Just like there is not a 3 or 4-year-old on the planet who isn't delicious and sparkly and creative and emotional and just like they all deserve the world, the biggest hug, like so much support. And when we can see ourselves through that lens, it doesn't excuse behavior, right? Like we still have to be grown-ups, but we can really look back and be like, that's me. That's who I am. That's who I am at my core. I am worthy of love. I'm worthy of forgiveness, worthy of grace, right? And it is very hard sometimes to look at our grown-up self in the mirror as we're unpacking all of our flaws, all of our failures, all of our regrets, and be like, you're wonderful and you're worthy of love and grace and forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to look back at and also kind of think about, well, how did I get from there to here? Because a lot of shit happened that made me who I am today. And not all of it was good, right?
Yeah.
And really allowing ourselves to be seen from a lens of grace and redemption and not from like, judgment.
Yeah. You wrote a newsletter like maybe a couple months ago, and I still remember it. And I remember the subject line was like, shame is a shitty teacher.
Yeah.
And I want to take a second and just like talk a little bit about that, because we're teetering on talking about shame as an emotion. And I feel like it really, I think that hit so hard because it's like, it really is a shitty teacher, but it's also very, very easy to fall into that. And I think for myself personally, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Like, I think I find it way easier to forgive others than I find it to forgive myself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, feel that way. And like learning how to actually, it's almost like accept your own humanness. And this has been the biggest like learning curve for me over the last year, is like understanding that in the same way that you don't expect other people to be perfect.
Yeah.
But for some reason you expect yourself to be perfect.
Yeah.
And accepting that you will make mistakes, you have made mistakes, and you will make them again is like very, very hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, shame is such a, my whole energy kind of drops just even contemplating the topic of shame. And what I want to say to folks who are currently aware that they experience shame spirals, first and foremost, it's an unproductive emotion. So maybe I can trick you into not engaging with shame because you have most people that engage with a lot of shame also have a desire to be better. They have a desire to be more successful. They have a desire to perform at a higher level. And so what I will often say to my founder clients is shame is like putting water in your gas tank. It's going to drain your energy. It's going to make you feel worse about yourself. You're not going to get back up to the plate and hit a home run when you're in a shame spiral. And so if you can start from that framing, okay, I'm shaming myself because I want to do better, but the shame is making me have less motivation and energy to do better. That's a trigger to realize maybe I should actually do the work to make shame not be my default option. And so what I generally recommend, and like, you could call this parts work. I think we get a little bit hung up on like labeling everything as like, what modality is that? But like, if you can be aware enough of your shame to say, come on, that's not true, right? To divide yourself. The voice of shame is here, but there's another voice. It's like, hey, that's not helpful, right? She's got to get up and go give a speech. Don't say there's not, and you're hearing voices, right? It can be a little bit weird the first time you do it, but then it becomes second nature. You can journal with the voice of, whether it's your higher self. Sometimes I'll have people role play that it's like, it's me, or it's like a mentor that you trust. If you came with your most shameful thing to, whether it's your higher self, a spirit guide, a mentor, right? What would they say to you? And can you say that to yourself? The other thing I'll say is, this is not a one and done. This is also not, I went on a magical ayahuasca retreat. Now I never have shame anymore. No, like if you are a human, this is going to be something that you have to work on over and over and over again. Because once you move through one gauntlet, I can forgive myself for that kind of stuff. Something else will happen in your life that tests you and reopens that wound. It's the work of a lifetime to really give yourself grace in every situation.
Yeah. Actually, can we talk a little bit about that? So we've talked a little bit about like psychedelics and just like the popularization of things like ayahuasca and I don't know, even like mushroom journeys, I think have become quite popular. Psilocybin. Yeah. I'd love to like just open that can of worms for a second and talk about that in the context of like, you know, somatic experiencing and other really like less potent modalities and how you think about those.
Yeah. So I don't want to be a buzzkill to everyone who's like deep on their medicine path, but here's what I'll say. I'm a trained shamanic practitioner. My teacher does lead one ayahuasca ceremony in Peru every year. I am not saying that there is no place for it. However, using ayahuasca and super doses of psilocybin as your primary healing modality is like using dynamite as your like primary like tool of doing a house renovation. It is way more firepower than is needed, and it is way less specific and targeted than what we're actually seeking. Now, and I do not speak for every shamanic, you know, indigenous practice around the world at all, but the primary use of those types of psychedelic journeys, using sacred plants, et cetera, was to basically like disintegrate the ego, right? Was to completely go into nature after having fasted for days, after having worked with non-psychoactive plants, and to open yourself up fully to the will of God and the will of the plant spirits. It was typically done by people who were on a shamanic path and were ready for whatever was handed to them by spirit. They were also living in communities and lifestyles where if you got a crazy freaking message, like you could immediately make those changes because your whole society was in alignment with, the wisdom of the plants is what we listen to, right? So if you're like, I'm feeling really lost or I'm feeling really this, and the first thing that you reach for is a huge dose of plant medicine, you got to be ready for what is going to come on the other side. And for every good story that I've heard probably 3 to 5 stories where someone was very destabilized, had perhaps a beautiful psychedelic experience, but then like it didn't change anything in their day-to-day life. I have a founder client who told me she had like 2 days of psychosis after doing an ayahuasca journey. And there are so many people. I mean, people assume that I lead plant medicine circles just because of like who I am and what I do. But like in the past week, I've had 3 different clients tell me that they're going to like entrepreneur ayahuasca, entrepreneur psilocybin. Guess what? Those plant spirits do not give a fuck what you do with your startup. And it is an abusive use of their wisdom and their magic to assume that you're going to get innovation for Q4 from plant spirit. So anyway, that's what I'll say. Now, microdosing psilocybin has documented mental health benefits that I think are really worth microdosing anything. Maybe I don't say anything, but microdosing psilocybin and other substances, cannabis, etc., these are medicinal plants. So taking a micro dose of them is actually a very thoughtful way to engage with their wisdom, to see how they react to your system. And if you're somebody who is actually on a deeply spiritual path and you want your world rocked, start with microdosing. Notice, what am I seeing? What am I sensing? Does this plant want me to do a journey with it? And if you do, it is wise to go in invitation to the wisdom of the plants, not, hey, I want to know if I should break up with my boyfriend. I'm telling you, the plant spirits do not give a fuck about your boyfriend. Right? Like, that's not what it's for. Whereas somatic experiencing is a targeted, specific form of nervous system and trauma therapy where you can say, I'm with this guy. This is happening. And you, in your complete right mind, sober mind, present mind, and body, can interpret symbols and symptoms that are coming up in your own body and immediately integrate them into your daily life. You do not need 3 weeks of integration. You don't need 2 days off of work to cry and like get your digestive system back in order. We're overdoing it. You know, I would say probably most humans could benefit from like one transformative plant medicine experience in their life, maybe a handful, right? Depending on their life path. People that are doing it every quarter or like, I mean, I know people that do it way more often than that. You know, it's not the intended use. And I think we're going to see a lot more blowback as more and more unscrupulous and untrained medicine practitioners continue to like host these beautiful circles.
Yeah, no, I love the perspective. I think it's really interesting. And thank you for sharing that. I think it's good for people to hear. I know, I'm excited for it because it's like, well, you know, I mean, I haven't actually partaken in a plant medicine journey of any kind. And it's something that I, you know, at various periods of time have been curious about, but I've also always felt a not insignificant amount of resistance or hesitation to, which is like, I think the big message like there is like, don't, if you're going to be called, it'll feel clear, I guess, but don't push.
Everybody wants a magic bullet, right? Everybody wants a magic bullet with weight loss. Everyone wants a magic bullet with healing. But if you talk to people who are like really in integrity in plant medicine work, they will tell you, this isn't a magic bullet. It's going to open a big freaking doorway. And then you're going to need to do the work for months and months and months or years and years and years to integrate the messages and actually bring it into your daily life.
Right.
Same thing when people are like, oh, I'm going to take Ozempic or whatever. Like if you talk to medical professionals, they're going to say, okay, take it, but understand that you also need to eat more protein, lift more weights. And it was like, yeah, whatever. Just give me the drug, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the mentality. It's like people want faster results. There's nothing fast about awakening. There's nothing fast about what I would call the journey of becoming, right? The unfolding path of your life. You cannot rush it. You cannot force it. No amount of plant medicine or other drugs. Believe me, I've tried. I'm not a big plant medicine person, but I did have a drug era. You can't rush what's coming for you, right? You can just be more present, be more open, not block the signs and synchronicities and blessings that are coming your way. But I think like this whole Western desire to get things done as efficiently as possible is just like in direct opposition with the flow of spirit.
Yeah. And actually, like on that note, another thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is I know that you were raised, I think, Catholic, right? And you obviously studied like shamanism, Buddhism you mentioned, and like lots of different sort of like religious modalities. This podcast is like a very open like space for people. And I'm like open about my beliefs as I'm sort of like exploring them and figuring them out. And I'm always curious to hear from people, especially like in your work, because you're in sort of this intersection of like spirituality, but then also very practical kind of like somatic tools. Like how do you marry those two? What is sort of your framework when it comes to like spirituality?
Yeah, I can tell you both what I say to other people and also like my personal beliefs, which, you know, as you mentioned, I was raised Catholic and I loved church. I taught Sunday school. I sang in the choir. I loved being in reverence to the divine. It filled me in a way that I really enjoyed, even as a young child. I never was someone who could believe certain biblical stories as like literal. Like it was always very clear to me, like, no, this isn't real. Like these stories are meant to be allegorical. They're meant to be like myths, right? And then you realize like, no, a lot of people in the deeply religious communities are like, no, this is Bible, right? Like this is fact. And I was like, oh, that doesn't really align with me. Let me start exploring some other things. So I went actually the deepest in the Bhakti yoga path. And I studied in India. I studied with like teachers from India. And when I was there in 2012, doing all these temple tours and doing all of these like very like deep practices, I had this moment where I was like, I am a spiritual tourist. Like I'm in someone's temple as like a white lady. Like it was like the cultural appropriation of all like really hit me upside the head. I was like, what if someone was like at my, you know, confirmation or my baptism, like in the back, like, oh, look what the priest is doing. Oh, this is so spiritual, right? And so I came back from that feeling very like, okay, well, I don't want to like be like a Hindu. Okay. Then I got really into Zen Buddhism, which is a little bit more, I mean, there's a lot in Buddhism, right? There are deities, et cetera, but it's a bit more agnostic. And I was very into that, but there was a sense of, I did want to speak to somebody. Like it wasn't, you know,
Who can I call?
Yeah, it wasn't like that kind of just open-ended, the universe, like that didn't resonate with me. I was never interested in shamanic stuff because in my mind, I was like, this is just another form of cultural appropriation. I didn't understand really what shamanic meant. I was like, oh, it's Peruvian, it's South American, it's this set of deities and this language. And if I go down that path, it's just another form of what I tried to do with Hinduism and yoga. And I'll just be like culturally appropriating somebody else. Because what I saw was white ladies with feathers and white ladies doing, you know, chanting in like languages that are not their own. Anyway, I was called to the shamanic path by receiving signs and messages from animal spirits. And I was like, well, I didn't ask for this. What the hell is going on? I knew I wasn't going crazy. It wasn't like hearing voices, but it was just very, during the pandemic, I was in the Catskills in the woods all the time. And I just started noticing things in nature in a different way and really receiving information and very clear messages. So I start my little Googling and whatever. And it initially led me to a local indigenous Native American woman who was making dream catchers that are inspired by spider webs because my first messenger was the spider. And so as I started studying what shamanic means, it is really just an earth-based form of worship. And we all live on the earth, right? So the way that you practice shamanic spirituality without it being appropriative is you work with your earth, right? I don't think about the power animals that are used in an Andean or Peruvian cosmology. I'm not talking about the jaguar and the puma, like you might see in a lot of the kind of, you know, ayahuasca journey type people stuff. It's like, no, I live in nature. There's bears. There's owls. Like these are my spirit messengers, right? The earth in my garden, the trees in my forest. These are my spirit guides, right? And so my personal cosmology is there's a creator. I don't know if there's a gender. I don't know if there's a name, right? But there is a creator. There is an all-knowing presence, an all-loving presence that has created the abundance of the universe, starting with nature. We are part of nature. We are all a part of this beautiful divine creation. We are the stewards of this divine creation. It is our responsibility to protect, nurture, honor, be in reverence of this divine creation. And so for me, it's like, well, this is a really beautiful way of conceptualizing spirituality and conceptualizing worship because I think it's beautiful to be Catholic or Jewish or Hindu or Muslim or whatever you practice, but to understand that there is interconnectivity amongst it all. I've heard a description where if like, you know, spirituality is the ocean and then religion is like a cup, right? You come and you scoop up a little bit of the ocean and you put it in a mason jar or you put it in a fishbowl, right? The religion is just the container. Spirituality is as vast as the ocean. And everything I do is informed by my faith. And sometimes I say shit and I'm like, do I sound like an evangelical Christian? Because I'm like talking about God and faith and creator and all this stuff. But I have there's no characters, there's no name, there's no like mythical stories. It's just, how could all of this exist without some divine force that was like, get ready, guys, it's about to be really cool, you know, like that's what I believe.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I wholeheartedly agree with like just the inevitability of a creator. That's something I talk about a lot.
Totally.
Whereas like everything else has also been a question mark. And I think too, it's like, I mean, similar to you've like explored and like traveled so much and I've like lived in different places. And for me, it's like one thing I think about sometimes is like, I love being around people of faith.
Yes.
People that have a strong faith. Almost irregardless of which faith that is.
100%.
But the energy is the same.
100%. When I went on a yoga retreat to Morocco in 2009, and it was in this very remote area. And you could hear the call to prayer echoing
I love that.
through the silence.
One of my favorite things about living in Dubai was the call to prayer.
Yeah. One of my son's best friend, his mom hosts Shabbat at their house every Friday. And I'm like, kind of wish I was Jewish because this is pretty cool. You know, like I love ritual. I love communion. I love reverence. It's all so beautiful. And then, you know, people take it to these, divide and conquer. People use everything to divide and conquer, whether it's race, religion, socioeconomic status, what sports team you root for, right? Like we can't have nice things, right?
Yeah.
We have to make everything a competition. And I think that's where it, that's where it can veer into a dangerous place.
Well, this is like a perfect opportunity to talk about your newest project.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about it. So you recently launched the Becoming Collective.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what it is first, and then I'll kind of go into the backstory. So Becoming is a spiritually rooted community. We meet live every Sunday night. It is not church. There is no, not church. There is no affiliation with any particular religion, but it is meant to harness the power of consistency, ritual, and community. So we gather live. It is not content on demand. I want you there. I want your face. I want your energy. I want you to be thinking all week, God, I can't wait till Sunday. I really need this. I really need this. It's been a crazy week. I've been so distracted. I've been so stressed. I really need this opportunity to root down with my tools, with my people. So because I am also a pragmatist and I want to give the people what they want, it's not just me yapping.
I want that.
The first Sunday of the month, me yapping. You get your little sermon, you get your little inspo. Second Sunday of the month, we will do somatic meditation. So you'll have an opportunity to practice getting into your body, noticing what's present. Third Sunday of the month is breath work. And I hate to be like, I designed a breath work, but basically, I love transformational breath work. I think once again, people go too hard. They're like, if I'm not like fully hyperventilating, then I'm not like doing it right. And so the form of breath work that I'm going to teach is trauma informed, meaning there are choice points. So every 7 minutes, there will be an opportunity to switch to a more kind of regulated, because holotropic breath work I teach conscious connected breath. It is creating dysregulation to shake things up, kind of like a hard workout, right? You like shake things up, you break your tear your muscle fibers so that there's healing after. Now, sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's too much too soon. So that's the breath work. And then the fourth Sunday of the month is community coaching, where people can come, ask questions, send questions in advance. And every single Sunday, there will be a 15 to 20 minute portion where I put people into small groups, 3 to 5 people, with prompts so that you can share, be witnessed, realize that we're all going through similar struggles, and to maybe have an opportunity to be vulnerable in a way that you might not have too many people in your like day-to-day life that you can do that with. And so in terms of why I decided to do this, spiritual autonomy is really important to me. I don't want to be anyone's guru. I don't want anyone to be anyone's guru. The shamanic path is what's called the path of direct revelation. So what does that mean? I don't need you to talk to God for me. I'm going to talk to him myself, right? I don't need you to tell me what to do on a new moon ceremony. It's between me and the moon. And everyone has that power. And when you realize, oh shit, I can do this myself. It's like your connection with spirit is like, and truly when you have that, it's like, it creates a sense of personal empowerment that nothing else can do. If you really believe that you are directly connected to your divine creator, whatever it looks like for you, there is something that no one can take away from you. It is indivisible, unbreakable. And so in terms of conceptualizing this, there is something that happens when you're a spiritual teacher where people often assume that what happens in that container or the wisdom or whatever, that it has something to do with the teacher. Now, any good spiritual teacher will tell you, I'm just a vessel. It's passing through me. It's passing through me on its way to you. And if I'm not there, you just need to open up your vessel and let it pass through to you. And so I'm calling it gentle support, gentle accountability, not I'm your teacher, I'm your guru, you need me. No, we're going to meet once a week so that I can remind you this is available to you anytime, night or day, when you need it most. And not to be, a alarmist astrology girl. We're in tough times, right? We are in times of upheaval. We are in times of rapid change, some good, some not so good. We can't wait for a coaching session. We can't wait for our therapist. We can't wait because the chaos is living in our hands and our pockets 24/7. We need to be able to do this stuff for ourselves when we need it.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to create for people, is a sense of spiritual autonomy by not being like overbearing in terms of the amount of spiritual guidance I'm providing.
Yeah, I honestly love this about your style, because I think this is another thing that like some therapeutic contexts can get wrong is it's like people develop this dependency upon it, and it becomes just another crutch. It's just, it looks like a better crutch than maybe what you were using before.
Yeah.
But it's just another thing that you're ultimately not self-reliant.
Yeah. And I think we need training wheels, right?
Of course.
Like we all need training wheels, and like doing something is better than doing nothing. But, the other thing is not everyone listening is like in the spiritual online community. So this might not resonate, but there is a lot of good reasons not to trust spiritual teachers in this moment, because everybody's got their high ticket course and their containers that are like wildly expensive, and come with me and do ayahuasca and I'll, 7 years of therapy in one night, like big promises. Girl, that's a big promise. You sure you can deliver that?
Yeah.
And we're capitalizing on people's insecurity
Yes.
and desire. Please save me. Somebody save me. Somebody fix me. Somebody tell me what to do. And that is the antithesis of what I want to provide, even if it takes longer, even if it means I don't have an aggressive marketing plan in terms of how I enroll people in this program, because that is antithetical to what I'm creating. If I'm coercing you to do it, your autonomy has already been sacrificed.
Yeah. Well, before we started recording this episode, you said something that I was like, I'm going to frame this. She said, God's my publicist. And I love that. But case in point, right? Like the way that we started working together, I think I do believe that there's certain things you can kind of give up to God.
Well, that's the other thing. And I don't say this to toot my own horn or to shit on other people, but I'm at a point in my career where I've built a successful coaching practice. I'm financially stable. I am by no means wealthy, but I'm financially stable. I have a husband. I have 2 kids. We have a house. Our kids go to school. Like, life is stable enough that I don't need for people to make my life livable through them spending money on my spiritual teaching. I think it's a very dangerous, it's a very dangerous relationship when the primary motivation for someone providing you with spiritual wisdom is to pay their bills. And for me, just like we were talking about earlier, everything happening kind of in divine timing. I wouldn't have been able to start this membership, which is $77 a month, just in full transparency, at a time where my financial needs were not met, because I would have had to do things from a place of not even scarcity, but need. I don't need people to sign up for this. It would be wonderful if people signed up. It would make me so happy. And I feel very confident in the value it would offer. But if nobody signs up, actually doesn't affect me at all. This is not really a business. It's a ministry. It is certainly not a charity, right? It's not a nonprofit, but it is something that I am creating because I believe that the need is there. And if it does not financially perform, my life is affected not at all.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah. I love that we're kind of getting into this, because this is one of the last things I wanted to kind of touch on is obviously you kind of operate at the intersection of spirituality and entrepreneurship. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You also do a lot of spiritual coaching. So I imagine the coaching that you do with entrepreneurs also comes from a spiritual lens. And I'd love to talk a little bit about how that intersection plays out, what you think are sort of similarities, maybe challenges when thinking about a spiritual path and an entrepreneurial path.
So an entrepreneurial path is a spiritual path. Even if you don't see it that way, entrepreneurship is the hardest thing that humans choose to do voluntarily. Point blank. It will push all of your buttons. It will make you revisit all of your traumas. It will push on your financial buttons, your fear of being seen. Am I good enough? Do I have the stamina? It tests you physically, mentally, emotionally. I have not met a single founder that at some point didn't need to lean on spiritual tools in order to withstand the pressures of being an entrepreneur. When it comes to the coaching piece, entrepreneurship is a practice that benefits from a lot of hands-on support because there are a lot of tactical decisions that need to be made. There are best practices, and it is actually unkind to make yourself the alpha and the omega of every single thing in your business. So it's good to have advisors and coaches and employees. Pay for as much help as you can get as an entrepreneur. If you can afford it, hire a coach, bring in an advisory board. Like, you need that type of hands-on help to build a business. It takes, big businesses have thousands of people building them. So it is not wild to assume that the founder is going to need hands-on support. With spirituality, it's so personal that you have to be really careful about too much support, because what you're building is yourself. Nobody's inside of your body. Nobody's inside of your mind. Nobody's in your conversations and your prayers with God. So that's why my approach in terms of how I help people spiritually and in terms of business are very, very different. But I'm going to share a quote with you that I think is hilarious. In God we trust. Everybody else better bring data. And like, that is like my, when it comes to entrepreneurship, like, there are certain moments where you have to let go and let God. If you're launching a product that has never existed before, nobody can tell you what the best choice is. They can give you frameworks, case studies. You can learn from other people's mistakes. But the reason why like innovative founders are the most successful is because they're doing something that's never been done before. Who can help you with that other than spirit, right? If it doesn't exist, it's in the land of nowhere. It's in the ether, right? And so, yeah, I just think if you're an entrepreneur, like, at some point, spirituality is going to creep into your life.
Creep in. I love it. Okay, quick lightning round before we close. One question I love to ask everybody that I have on the show is just like, what's one non-negotiable part of your, I usually say wellness routine. I think in our case, it could be wellness or spirituality.
Yeah. I want to say awe. And for me in particular, that is most related to both nature and my children. If you are not fully metabolizing the magic that exists in your life, I don't need to know you to know that there is magic that exists in your life, whether it's nature, whether it's your pet, whether it's your child, whether it's like somebody in your life cooks you amazing food, right? Some experience where you're just like, wow, that is medicine. It is the medicine that we all need to not fall into despair, overwhelm, stress, distraction. And, I'm here for this quick business trip. I got up this morning, went to the beach, watched the sunrise, because I don't live at the beach. And the beach is majestically beautiful. I'm not going to miss that shit. I live an awe-centric life.
I am obsessed with that. Oh, so many things I need to literally frame and put up on my wall from this conversation. Oh my God. Amazing. Amanda, where can people find you and where can people join Becoming? Tell us all the things.
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm just at Amanda Baudier, Baudier, Becoming Collective, because gosh darn it, there's so many people with handles out there. It is becoming_collective_, or online at becoming-collective.com. You can also access everything through my personal page, and it would be my honor to have you in circle.
Amazing. And we will put all the links in the show notes. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on. This was so fun.
So fun. I'm glad we're going to lunch so we can keep yapping.
Absolutely.